For long centuries, murderers were hanged in Britain. And whenever there was a hanging, mourning and morbid curiosity were commonplace outside the gates of the prison. But there were always those who felt that hanging was an inhuman and inhumane kind of punishment. And 5 years ago, they got their way. Britain abolished the death penalty for murder. Now there are no hanging days and no crowds of the curious. The abolition of the death penalty was only an experiment to last for 5 years. Those 5 years are almost up. And Britain has to decide now whether to permanently abolish the death penalty for murder, to extend the experiment for a few years, or to return to the days before 1965, when the law in Britain said that a man convicted of murder was to be hanged. The statistics for these 5 years are confusing. They can be used to prove whatever you want, that men murder more often, less often, or just about as often when they know they won't have to hang for it. The most generally accepted view, the most well-informed view, seems to be that murder has increased since 1965, but not necessarily because the death penalty was abolished. Parliament and most British politicians tend to be in favor of the permanent abolition of the death penalty for murder. But in voting on it, they have to reckon with the fact that the British people apparently feel safer when the hangman is at work. A recent poll showed that 84% of them want convicted murderers to hang once again. But John Lennon of the Beatles, who's campaigning for permanent abolition, doesn't think the poll means much.
I mean, you can get 84% of anywhere to talk about hanging, you know, but they don't get much they don't get enough information. The pro-hanging people talk about it. They bring up people's fears about, it could be your daughter raped and killed, it could be, of course it could be anybody's, you know, but the answer isn't to kill somebody.
John, why do you believe that the death penalty for murder should be permanently abolished in Britain?
Well, I believe thou shalt not kill, Italy, and I don't think it solves any problems by killing the person, the murderer. You know, I think all so-called criminals are our responsibility and a product of society, and I don't even like locking people up, you know. But killing, I'm against killing, you know. I don't think it solves any problem. If a country like Belgium has not had, I believe, not had any state deaths since 18-something, you know, and they don't seem to be going berserk over there, and there's no more rape and murder in Belgium than anywhere else. So why can't we be that civilized? That's all. I think it's the 20th century. If they're going to have hanging, make it public, you know. Let's not pretend about it. Let's have it in the square, you know, or not have it at all.
Well, you seem to be out of step with the English people a little bit because...
Well, it depends whose paper you're reading.
Well, there was a poll that said 84% of the British people would like to see hanging restored.
Yeah, well, when you say that to Nixon, he says, well, the silent majority is with me, so we claim the silent majority, right? And I bet you, if it got down to a vote, it might go the other way. Of course, the Tories are going to try and get in on hanging, you know, and you can easily whip up a crowd for hanging, you know. And the way the socialists are trying to push it through so fast now, it might upset people that haven't even made up their mind yet, because they're trying to push it through very fast to get rid of hanging forever. But when it really gets down to percents, I mean, we know those Gallup polls change from day to day, etc., and that was just one Tory Gallup poll that said 84% of Britain wants hanging. Well, let's prove it, you know.
You have behind you a sign that says, Britain murdered Hanratty. Now, I know who Hanratty is, but yes. Why, you know, you're a very busy man. You spend a lot of time doing a lot of things. It took me 2.5 hours waiting here for you to get here.
I'm sorry about that.
Well, I'm not asking for an apology, not at all, but why do you, with so many demands on your time, devote so much of it to this? Why do you care about it?
Because I care about people, and in a selfish way, I care about John and Yoko. I wouldn't like us to be killed in a war, Britain's war, anybody else's war, or in violence. I wouldn't like for either of us to be hurt or hung if we went insane and killed somebody. Or so if somebody killed Yoko, I wouldn't like to hang the guy. I might think it for a second, but in reality, I wouldn't want it to happen, and vice versa. And the hanging thing is something that I've been thinking about a lot because it's so much in the news in Britain. I didn't have a platform. And then from nowhere, Mr. and Mrs. Hanratty, the parents of the boy that they think was not guilty. Now, I'm not sure, but I say either way, if there's a shadow of a doubt about the boy, there should be a public inquiry. That's all we're asking for. And this was a platform to say something about hanging, because the youth gets the vote this time, but so far they're not registering. And I'd really like to ask them to register if it's going to be a vote on hanging, because I haven't voted once. I'm 29, so that's 9 votes I've missed, 8 votes. But if there's a real issue, I think voting is the only way.
Do you think most of the English people really would just as soon have it abolished, the death penalty abolished altogether?
I think most people would. Long-winded articles in the Times and the Mirror, but people haven't got time to read that and assimilate all that. They want some kind of, some simplified version. It's to kill or not to kill, regardless of the fact. But of course,
But I guess you don't want her to move her lips, do you? No, that's fine. About another 5 seconds of that. But I guess you don't want her to move her lips, do you? No, that's fine. About another 5 seconds of that.